A welder on an oil platform descended 250 feet to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico to carry out an emergency repair. What happened down there? No one has been able to explain to this day. A miracle of the Virgin Mary that began in the most unlikely place in the world. And that changed Nathan Carter's life forever. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I would love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know, that kind of man who seems to be made of iron, the kind who doesn't complain, who doesn't talk about what he feels, who wakes up every day at 4:30 in the morning and does what needs to be done, no matter what. Nathan Carter was that man. 45 years old, an underwater welder for 22 years, hands hardened by years of labor, broad shoulders, a face marked by the sun and the salt of the sea. The kind of man you look at and just know he has seen a lot in life. He had been working on oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico since he was 23. He had seen everything: storms that made the entire platform sway, accidents that took co-workers away from the job forever, nights so dark down below that the helmet light barely illuminated 2 meters ahead. Do you know what the work schedule of an offshore welder is like? 2 weeks at sea, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. No weekends, no holidays. Then 2 weeks at home. Home. For Nathan, home was an apartment in Houston where his wife, Michelle, raised their 2 children practically on her own. Tyler, the oldest, was 10 years old. Emma, the youngest, was 7. They were growing up far too fast. And Nathan spent half the year away, watching all of it through photos on his phone. You know that steel locker every platform worker has in the living quarters, where they keep their personal belongings? In Nathan's locker, there were 2 things besides his clothes. A photo of his family, Michelle smiling, Tyler at about 2 years old holding her hand, and Emma still a baby in her arms. Nathan looked at that photo every night before going to sleep. And a blue rosary. The rosary belonged to Michelle. She had given it to him the first time he boarded a platform 22 years earlier. "To protect you," she said, "the Virgin Mary will take care of you." Nathan wasn't religious. He never had been. He had been raised Catholic like many families in southern Texas, but faith had been left behind somewhere between adolescence and adulthood. He didn't pray. He didn't go to Mass. He didn't believe in miracles. But he kept the rosary anyway. Why? Maybe because throwing it away would feel like throwing away a piece of Michelle. Maybe because deep down, very deep down, a part of him still wanted to believe that someone was watching over him. What Nathan didn't know was that that rosary would come to mean far more than he could ever imagine. It was July of 2019. Nathan was in the 2nd week of his work rotation. There were still 7 days left before he would return to Houston and see his family. Nathan was standing on the deck, staring out at the horizon. The sun was setting, the sky turning orange and red. Beautiful, but Nathan didn't keep looking for long. On the platform, you learn not to admire the horizon. It only makes you miss home more. "Carter!" The supervisor's voice cut through the noise of the machines. Nathan turned around. Dave Morrison in his early 50s, graying beard, the face of a man who hadn't slept properly in a week. He had a radio in his hand and a serious expression. Trouble. "We've got a situation," Dave said, walking over to him. "Piping in Sector 7. The sensors are showing a leak. Needs immediate repair." Nathan nodded. "When?" "Now?" "All right," Nathan said. "I'll get ready." Have you ever had that feeling? That thing in your stomach that tells you something isn't right? Nathan had it that afternoon. While putting on the suit, while checking the equipment, while stepping into the diving bell, something inside him was restless. It wasn't fear. He had gone down hundreds of times. He knew that job better than he knew his own home. But there was something. Before closing the helmet, he did something he hadn't done in years. He looked at the locker, at the blue rosary hanging inside. For a second, he thought about taking it, but he didn't. He closed the locker and stepped into the bell. The descent began. Have you ever been to the bottom of the sea? Not on a beach, with a snorkel, looking at colorful little fish. The real bottom, where sunlight doesn't reach, where the pressure squeezes your body, where the silence is so deep that you can hear your own heart beating inside the helmet. That's where Nathan worked. The diving bell descended slowly. Meter by meter, the light kept fading. Blue turned to gray. Gray turned to black. Down there, the water was freezing. It didn't matter how hot it was on the surface. At 250 feet deep, the cold was constant. The thermal suit helped, but Nathan could still feel the low temperature trying to get in. When he reached the work site, Nathan turned on the helmet light and looked around. The platform structure stretched in all directions. Steel pillars covered with barnacles and algae, thick pipelines crossing from one side to the other, and beyond the reach of the light, total darkness. Surface, this is Carter. I've reached the site. Beginning inspection. The radio crackled. Copy that, Carter. We're monitoring. Let us know if anything comes up. Nathan exited the bell. The umbilical, that thick cable that connected him to the bell and supplied oxygen, heating, and communication, uncoiled behind him as he swam toward Sector 7. It took about 10 minutes to get there, and when he arrived, he saw the problem. It was worse than the sensors had indicated. The main pipeline was corroded in several places, rust eating the steel from the inside and the outside. Around it, a tangled mess of old pipes, some deactivated for years, others still in use. The space was tight, full of old, rusted parts that no one had bothered to remove. Nathan examined the area. He mentally calculated what needed to be done, cut out the damaged section, weld in a new piece, a 3-hour job, maybe 4. He positioned the equipment and began. The job of an underwater welder is unlike any other. You're in the dark, in the cold, under enough pressure to cause serious problems if anything goes wrong. And even so, when you're focused on the work, when the welding arc lights up the steel and you see the joint forming, there's total concentration. The outside world disappears. There is only you and the job. Nathan was in that concentration when it happened. A sound, not a sound from outside, a sound from above. Steel groaning. The kind of sound that makes any worker freeze inside. He stopped welding, looked up. And then it came. It was too fast to react. A steel pipe from the impurity filtration system broke loose from its rusted support. Heavy, thick, meters of steel crashing down. Nathan tried to pull back. It wasn't fast enough. The pipe came from above. It struck his shoulder and pinned his left leg against another pipe below. The pain was immediate, intense, like someone had clamped his leg in a vise. He screamed inside the helmet. "Surface! Surface! This is Carter! A pipe fell! I'm trapped! I repeat, I'm trapped!" The radio crackled. The voice on the other end came broken, cutting out. "Carter! Copy! Team! Minu!" And then the radio died. Nathan tried again. "Surface? Surface? Respond!" Nothing. Only silence. The amount of steel around him was blocking the signal, or the equipment had been damaged in the fall. Either way, the result was the same. Nathan was without communication. He looked around. The helmet light illuminated a tangled mess of pipes. The pipe that had fallen was on top of him, pinning his left leg. Pain throbbed with every heartbeat. He tried to free himself. He pulled his leg, pushed the steel, used all the strength he had. Nothing. The pipe was too heavy, and every time he tried, the pain in his leg got worse. Breathe, Nathan. Breathe. He forced himself to stay calm. 22 years doing this. He knew panic was the enemy. He looked at the pressure gauge on his wrist, the numbers glowing green. Oxygen. 47 minutes. 47 minutes. If the rescue team arrived in 20, 30 minutes, he'd be fine. Squeezed, but fine. But if they didn't... Nathan was alone. 250 feet below the surface, trapped, without communication, with less than an hour of oxygen, and no one knew exactly where he was. The first minutes were the worst, not because of the pain he could endure. It was strong, but it was just pain. His body had endured worse. The worst part was the silence. You never truly hear silence until you're alone at the bottom of the sea. There's no sound from the world above, just your breathing, the beating of your heart, and the thoughts that won't stop coming. But I'm going to stay here. Nathan pushed the thought away. He couldn't think like that. He had to focus on the problem. He had to find a solution. He looked around again. The helmet light was growing weaker, battery running out. Soon he would be in complete darkness. He tried one more time to free himself. He pushed, pulled, twisted. The pain in his legs screamed. The steel didn't move. He looked at the gauge. Oxygen, 38 minutes. Where is the rescue team? They knew he had gone down. When they lost communication, they should have sent someone after him. They had to be searching. But the structure had shifted. He was no longer where he was supposed to be. And in the dark, in that chaos of steel, finding a man was not easy. Michelle. Her face appeared in Nathan's mind. Her smile. The way she laughed when he told a silly joke. Her eyes early in the morning, still sleepy, making coffee in the kitchen. 22 years married. And how many of those years had he truly spent with her? How many mornings had he woken up beside her instead of in a platform bunk? He had promised he would stop, that this would be the last season, that after this he would stay home, get a job on land, watch the children grow up close instead of through photos on his phone. Promises. How many promises had he made? Tyler, Emma, the children's faces. Tyler, 10 years old, full of energy, wanting to play ball with his father. How many times had Nathan promised to play with him and wasn't there? How many school games had he missed? How many nights had the boy needed his father, and his father was 200 miles out in the middle of the ocean? Emma, 7 years old, still at that age where her father is a superhero. But what kind of superhero disappears for 2 weeks at a time? What kind of father would she remember when she grew up? Oxygen, 31 minutes. The flashlight went out. Darkness. Not darkness like when you close your eyes. Total darkness, the kind of darkness where you can't see your own hand in front of your face. Nathan closed his eyes. It made no difference. My God. The word came without him thinking, not like a prayer, like a sigh, like that sound that comes out of you when there's nothing left to do. My God, please. Please what? He didn't know. He didn't know who he was talking to. He didn't know if anyone was listening. But he spoke anyway. Please. Not like this, not now. I promised her. I promised I would come back. Silence. Only the sound of his own breathing, faster now. The oxygen being consumed more quickly. And then, have you ever heard a voice that shouldn't be there? Not a thought, not a memory. A real voice, clear, present, as if someone were speaking right beside you. Nathan heard it. Nathan, the bar behind you. And silence, that was all. A female voice, calm, gentle, 5 words, and then nothing more. He opened his eyes. Not that it made any difference. The darkness was the same. What was that? Did he know that voice? No, but at the same time it felt like he did. It was familiar in a way he couldn't explain, like something you had always known, but had forgotten. The rosary. The blue rosary Michelle had given him 22 years ago. The Virgin Mary will take care of you. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. This isn't real, he murmured. I'm low on oxygen. I'm imagining things. Well, but the voice had said something. The bar behind you. What bar? It made no sense. None of it made any sense. Nathan stretched his left arm backward, slowly, in total darkness, feeling through the void. 20 centimeters, nothing. 25, nothing. 30. His fingers touched steel, A bar, loose. Exactly behind him, his heart raced. There was a bar there, exactly where the voice had said. Nathan pulled the bar. It was heavy, but it wasn't stuck. He managed to bring it in front of his body. And now, he thought, the piping was trapping his leg. If he could use the bar as a lever, maybe he could lift the weight enough to free himself. He felt along the piping that held his leg. He searched for a place where he could wedge the bar. There, an opening between the pipe and the floor. He wedged the bar in. He pushed. Slowly, steadily. The steel groaned. The pain in his leg became unbearable for a second. He almost screamed, but he kept pushing. The piping gave way. Just a little. Just a few centimeters, but it was enough. Nathan pulled his leg. Free. He was free. The pain was still there. His leg was probably broken or badly injured, but he could move. He could get out of there. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "Thank you." Now he needed to find his way back, in total darkness. Nathan swam. With a leg that barely worked, with the oxygen running low, in total darkness, he swam. Meters and meters in the dark. He looked at the gauge on his wrist. Oxygen, 7 minutes. He kept swimming, and then, ahead, a faint light, the diving bell. But where was the rescue team? Nathan needed to get attention. The radio didn't work. Shouting was useless underwater, but sound travels far in water. He still had the steel bar in his hand. He struck a nearby pipe, once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed through the water, strong, clear, the kind of sound that travels far in the ocean. He kept striking, and then more lights, coming toward him. Flashlights, the rescue team. Nathan kept pounding, guiding them to him. The lights drew closer. Silhouettes of divers appeared in the darkness, hands holding him, gestures asking if he was okay. He gave a thumbs up. They took him to the bell. The ascent began. Nathan looked down one last time, at the darkness he had come from, and whispered too softly for anyone to hear, "Thank you." When Nathan reached the surface, the sun had already risen. He didn't really remember the ascent. He didn't remember the time in the decompression chamber. Only fragments, lights, voices. Someone saying he was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That's what they thought. His leg was broken in 2 places. The doctor said he shouldn't have been able to swim like that the pain must have been unbearable, that most people wouldn't have managed it. "How did you get out of there?" one of the doctors asked. Nathan looked at him. What was he supposed to say? That a voice in the darkness had helped him? That the Virgin Mary had appeared at the bottom of the sea and told him how to get out? They would think the low oxygen had affected his mind. Hallucination, trauma, an irrational explanation. "I don't know," he said. He knew what had happened. In the days that followed, he stayed in the infirmary on the platform. Then he was transferred to Houston, surgery on his leg, physical therapy, weeks of recovery. Michelle came as soon as she found out. She walked into the hospital room with red eyes and hugged him so tightly it hurt. And Nathan hugged her back in a way he hadn't in years, as if she were the most precious thing in the world, because she was. "I thought I had lost you," she whispered. "So did I," he said, "but I'm here. I came back." Tyler and Emma came later, the boy holding his sister's hand, both afraid of hurting their father but wanting to hug him. Nathan pulled them close, hugged his children in a way he hadn't in a long time. "Dad, are you okay?" Tyler asked. "I am, son. Now I am." Emma didn't say anything. She just stayed wrapped around him, holding tight. It was one night, about 2 weeks after the accident. Nathan was at home in bed, his leg still in a cast. Michelle was beside him, reading a book. The house was quiet, the children asleep. "Michelle?" She lowered the book. Nathan was silent for a moment, thinking about how to say it. Whether he should say it. "Something happened down there, on the day of the accident. Something I didn't tell anyone." Michelle closed the book. gave him her full attention. What happened? Nathan took a deep breath. I was trapped. In the dark. Without oxygen. I thought I wasn't going to make it out, Michelle. Truly. There was no way out. I tried everything. Nothing worked. She took his hand, squeezed it. And then I heard a voice. Michelle didn't say anything. She just waited. A female voice, calm. It only said my name and 5 words. Nathan, the bar behind you. That's all. And then silence. He looked at his wife. I didn't know what it meant, but I reached my arm back and there was a bar there, exactly behind me. In total darkness, Michelle. And I used that bar to free myself. She squeezed his hand. I know how this sounds. I know. But Michelle, it wasn't lack of oxygen. It wasn't my mind making things up. It was real. I felt it. I know it was real. Michelle had tears in her eyes. Do you know who it was? She asked softly. Nathan nodded. Do you remember the rosary you gave me 22 years ago when I boarded for the first time? Of course, I remember. You said the Virgin Mary would take care of me. He squeezed her hand. You were right. She just held him and cried. And Nathan cried too. For the first time in years, he cried. The months that followed were different, not because Nathan became a completely different person. He was still the same practical man, a man of few words who didn't like drama, but there was something about him that had changed. He didn't go back to the platforms. He found a job on land. Structural welder, he earned less, but he was home every night to have dinner with his family. Tyler finally had his father to play ball in the backyard. Nathan was there, even tired from work, playing, running, letting the boy win every now and then. Emma had her father to read to her before bed. Nathan sat on her bed, read the books she chose, did the characters' voices. The girl laughed and asked for another story, and Nathan read one more. Michelle noticed first. You're different, she said one night, as the two of them washed dishes together. Different how? I don't know. More here, more present. He started going to Mass with Michelle. Not every Sunday, but when he could. He sat in the pews, listened to the readings, thought about the voice he had heard in the dark. He never heard that voice again. Sometimes, on quiet nights, he wondered if he would hear it again, if she would appear at some difficult moment, guiding him the way she had guided him that day. But she didn't appear. And maybe that was how it had to be. Maybe that single time, in that single moment, had been enough. Nathan didn't try to explain what had happened. He didn't try to prove anything. He didn't try to convince anyone. When his co-workers on the platform asked how he had escaped, he gave vague answers. I got lucky. Only Michelle knew the truth. And that was enough. Because some things are not meant for everyone to understand. Some things are meant only for you, a gift you keep in your heart and carry in silence. The blue rosary now sat on Nathan's bedside table. Every day before going to sleep, he looked at it. Every day when he woke up, it was the first thing he saw, not as a good luck charm, not as superstition, but as a reminder that there was someone watching over him. There always had been. He only had to descend 250 feet into the darkness to finally realize it. Today, a few years later, Nathan still lives in Houston, his leg healed completely. Tyler is growing up, becoming a young man. Emma lost her baby teeth and now has a brand new smile. Michelle smiles more now. That smile that used to disappear when Nathan boarded the helicopter came back to stay. Sometimes, when Nathan is driving alone or sitting on the porch in the late afternoon, he thinks about that day, 250 feet below the surface. Total darkness. Oxygen running out. The voice that came from nowhere. Nathan. His name, spoken gently. He closes his eyes and can still hear it. And he smiles. Because whatever happened that day, a miracle or something no words can explain, one thing he knows for sure. He was not alone. He never was, and he never will be. And look, if you made it this far, all the way to the end of Nathan's story, do one thing for me. Write Blue Rosary in the comments, the gift Michelle gave Nathan 22 years ago, and that he finally understood the meaning of. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read Blue Rosary in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles of the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any stories about miracles of the Virgin Mary. Write in the comments about a miracle you have witnessed or experienced. Sometimes telling our story can give hope to someone who really needs it. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that we are never alone, even in the darkest moments. May the Virgin Mary continue blessing and protecting you and your family. Amen.